Any of y'all ever watch Community, the show?
I don't know television.
You never watched Community? I mean, whenever Greenville comes, what was it? Greendale. That's what it was called. But it always is close enough, and always I expect Chevy Chase.
Whenever I explain where I grew up, I kind of tell people, you ever see Community?
Community, it's a half-hour sitcom.
Oh, no, not Community. I'm thinking Parks and Rec.
Oh, yeah. Community's a half-hour sitcom. Chevy Chase is in it. Early 2000s. Donald Glover, yeah. Chevy Chase actually gets fired halfway through the series for saying the N-word, basically.
In the series or in real
No,
life?
that's not a plot point. That's about Chevy Chase.
Yeah. I was about to say, if it's bonus here, you could have just edited that out, I thought.
They fired, I mean, I still don't get it. He stepped on purpose and they fired him from the show?
I think he said it just like in.
He said it in between lines, like in between sentences, a joke about something.
So they fired him.
And one of the,
Really fired him.
oh yeah, no, it was not a.
Oh, wait a minute. Maybe I didn't put the battery. I took the batteries out.
Welcome, Greenville. We love having you here. Don't sit back there, though. At least sit like in the middle-ish. Y'all are going to be like 90% of the people here. So really make yourself comfortable or come on over here if you want. Hazina Elohim tfilati, Hazina Elohim tfilati, Yana titalam, Netichinagi, Yana titalam, Netichinagi. Nati, Hazina Elohim tfilati. Hazina Elohim tfilati, V'yal natitalam, Metichinati, V'yal natitalam, Metichinati. Welcome, Greenville folk. I love having you all here. We really don't. It's really great having you all here. I love when Greenville comes. It's always one of my favorite times of the year. Miss having you all here over the last few years during the pandemic. but glad that things are a little more back to normal to have you here. So we're really going to start just by kind of warming up and singing and waiting for the Kings Highway traffic to die down. And did you all get stuck on that, the traffic on there from the balloon glow? Do you know about this? The glow. So I'm going to get all these details wrong that I'm about to tell you. So really don't believe anything I'm going to say. But there's this, happens every year in Forest Park. There is a balloon race. Is that right?
No, it's a glow.
Yeah, but tomorrow's the race, right? Tomorrow's the race, and hot air balloons, right? And so tonight, they all gather, all the participants who are going to be in the race, and they glow them up, right? Like they make them big. They don't go into the sky, but they fill them with, lights, and it's beautiful. I think I've described that at least a little bit, but yeah. So anyways, that's why there was so much traffic, though, too. So really nice to have you all here. We'll take some time for music at the beginning as we just get into sort of a Shabbostic vibe. We say a Shabbos like a Shabbat sense. The idea with Shabbat, really. Now, you all have probably heard, right, that the Sabbath is the day we don't work on. Is that a framing you've heard before, right? So it's actually a misunderstanding of what we mean by work. The word in Hebrew is malacha. And we have a word in Hebrew for work like we think of it. Avodah is labor, the work we do with our hands. But that's not the word that the Torah says. That's not what we find in the book of Genesis when it talks about Shabbat. It's malacha. Is Leslie giving out free cell phones to people? Is that? Oh, you're showing around balloon globe pictures. Funny. So instead we have this word malacha. It's not the labor we do with our hands. It's the act of creation. It's the act of changing. It's the act of controlling. Shabbat's not the day where we refrain from doing hard work. Shabbat's the day where we refrain from controlling the world around us, from pretending that the world was made for us, and instead, where we understand that we were made for the world. And that somehow seeing ourselves not as the masters of the universe, not as the masters of creation, but instead as just more passengers on this big rock, this big spaceship we call Earth, that hopefully it'll change how we live the other 6 days of the week. It'll teach us not to exploit our world around us, not to exploit each other. That's the hope, at least. So we are going to have a number of these songs, a number of these prayers where you'll hear that there are words, but also there's yidais. The yidai part is called a nigun. It's a Jewish, Yiddish, Hebrewization that just means a song that has no words, a song that just has yididais or tidididais or whatever kind of sounds you like works, lies. So I invite you all to share in those moments if you'd like. We'd love to hear your voices. This is a poem. It's a relatively recent poem in Jewish history. It was written by the mystics of Tzfat, the mystics who had fled ethnic cleansing after ethnic cleansing and found their way to a little mountain town in the north of Israel. I say it's really recent, relatively recent Jewish history because it's only about 500 years old. Right, that's the modern era for Jews. So these mystics looked around their world and they said God is to be found everywhere. That every word becomes God. Every word becomes sacred, every word becomes holy. Every act, every person, every rock. So they wrote this poem called Ana Bakoach, and it said that the entirety of the poem is a sacred name for the divine. And each verse of the poem is a sacred name for the divine. And each word of each verse is a name. Yiddy-dum, yiddy-ay-ay-yo, yiddy-day-day-do. Yiddy-dum, yiddy-ay-ay-yo, yiddy-day-day-do. Yiddy-dum, yiddy-ay-ay-yo, yiddy-day-day-day, diddy-day-day-do, yiddy-day-day-do. Yum, diddy-day-day-day, yum diddy da da da, yiddy dum yiddy ay ay yo, yiddy da da do, yiddy dum yiddy ay ay yo, yiddy da ay ay yo. How about Harani? Good Shabbos. I know, right? And you're welcome to keep it there. So we continue with the words of these mystics on page 3. Did you all grab a siddur? Did you grab a prayer book? Oh, you got it. So send one person from each end of the line or something. Right back there, you'll find sidurs. We'd love for everyone to grab one. Kind of looks like this. So these are the words of Isaac Luria, who at least I had someone in my family who liked to claim we were descendants of Isaac Luria. I'm not sure I really believe it, but Isaac Luria had this custom. He would go out with his family, with his students, with his chassids, just as the sun was setting, just a little bit before what it looks like now, just as the sun was setting, on Friday night. And he would go out and he would greet them all dressed in white as if they were all dressed for a wedding. And it's how they understood this moment. It's how they understood this moment of Shabbat beginning, of Friday turning into Saturday, that this was a cosmic wedding. There's a midrash, which is to say a story that is true, but we're not supposed to believe it. Those are the best stories, I think, right? There's a midrash that says that just as the mothering aspect of the divine, the Shekhinah, just as Adam and Eve were entering into the world, entering out of the garden, that this Shekhinah could not bear to be without her children. And so the mystics said she entered into the world and resides with us. It's the comfort that we feel. It's the arms surrounding us when we feel alone. But every Friday, Isaac Luria would say, every Friday night, there would be this cosmic reunification when the terrible twos of creation blended back into the oneness, where the divisions that we imagine between us, that we think are so important, national divisions and ethnic divisions and religious divisions and political and ideological, that they begin to fade away, and that we understand in the end that we all are a part of the same oneness. So, we welcome Shabbos. We welcome Shabbos. We welcome Shabbos like an angel, like a wedding. Page 6. Shalom Aleichem.
Shalom Aleichem, Malachei Hasharet, Malachei Elyon, Melech Malachei Hamlachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Boachem LaShalom, Malachei Hashalom, Malachei HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Bachni l'shalom, Malachei Shalom, Malachei Elyon, Melech Malachei Amlachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Tzedechem l'shalom, Malachei Shalom, Malachei Elyon, Melech Malachei Amlachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu.
Turn to page 8 for Lechadodi. As we enter into Shabbos, as we recognize that it's impossible to just move from the week into Shabbat. We have to sit for a minute in the liminal. We have to sit in that in-between space. Before we can inhale the new, we have to exhale what we have been holding in. And I don't know about anyone else, I feel like I've been holding a lot in this week. all down, we put the schmutz down. Schmutz, do you all know what schmutz means? Is that a word? Who knows what schmutz means? Show of hands. No, we don't know schmutz. So they say that in Yiddish you can't, there are people over here know schmutz, yeah. They say that you can't actually give a definition for a word in Yiddish. You just have to like use it over and over again. So what I would say is schmutz is like the stuff that's on you that your mom might lick her thumb and try to wipe it off of you, right? Like the schmutz. But it's also metaphorical schmutz, right? It's the stuff we carry around through tough weeks, through a world that's not always the place we wish it was. Through lives that aren't always the lives we wish they were. We carry a lot of schmutz, and we learn to walk around with the schmutz on us, right? Our mom's not always there to wipe it off. But on Shabbat, if we can, we take a moment to put the schmutz down, to just let go of it, to know it'll be waiting for us after Shabbat is over. It will be waiting. It certainly will be waiting, but hopefully we can carry it a little more if we put it down. Page 8. Top of page 9. Likrat Shabbat, lechu v'necha, ki hi makor habracha, merosh mikerem nesucha. entrance as we welcome Shabbos like a bride. Oive shalom, ateret bala, gam besimcha uvtzola, toch emunei am segula, boi chala, ulecha dodi likrat kala, b'nei Shabbat nikabela, ulecha dodi likrat kala, b'nei Shabbat nikabela. Remain standing as we turn back around. Actually, we'll probably talk for a second, so if you want to sit down, you'll have a second before you... What? They are? So there's this custom for Baruch Hu, which is the call to prayer. There's this custom that we turn towards Yerushalayim. That wherever we are, wherever Jews find themselves, anywhere in the world, when we begin our services, everything until now has been warm-up. When we actually begin our services, like the spokes of a wheel, we all turn towards the center. We all turn towards Yerushalayim. We all, in that sense, turn towards each other. But we don't turn towards the Jerusalem of this world. We turn towards the Jerusalem that is yet to become. We turn towards the Jerusalem that lives up to its name. At the core of Yerushalayim is Ir Shalom, city of peace. And we know all too well that all too often Yerushalayim is not a city of peace. So we call each other to prayer with words of Baruch Hu, but we also call each other to obligation, knowing that the world is not the world we are called to make, that our children and the next generation deserve better. So we turn towards Jerusalem, not the Jerusalem that is, but the Jerusalem that can be. Invite everyone to rise. Baruch Hu Hit Adonai HaMevorach Baruch Adonai HaMevorach So I am totally obsessed by the James Webb Telescope. Have I said the full name right? I'm obsessed with it, but I can never remember the name of it. Yeah. Have you all seen these pictures too? Do you know what we're talking about? So there's this brand new space telescope that replaces the Hubble telescope, and it's really like one of the amazing engineering achievements of humanity that this thing was created and that this thing was able to be made. And it's able to look at galaxies so far away that it takes light billions of years to get to us. But like they're that far away that light itself, meaning everything that we're seeing, takes billions of years to get here, which means that we're not seeing the world as it exists when we look through that telescope. We're seeing the world as it was. We're seeing the universe as it was, that in the most profound of senses, this telescope is a time machine that lets us see the past, lets us see galaxies billions and billions of years ago. And there's a smallness that comes from that. There is a smallness when we realize that we are one of a billion galaxies out there. And we are one of a billion suns in that galaxy and one of a billion, well, not a billion planets around our sun, I guess, but right? We're a tiny little blue dot in a great big universe. And so before we begin our prayers, before we get into sort of the inner work, we have to stop and recognize how small this all is. We have to hold on to that for a second. And sometimes it's a little easier to live, I think, when you hold on to that smallness, when the weightiness you can let go of for just a moment. So we take that divine perspective, we take that cosmic perspective. Page 12, Ma'ariv Aravim.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam Asher midbaro ma'ariv aravim Ma'ariv aravim amen Ma'ariv aravim amen Ma'ariv aravim amen בחוכמה פותח שערים ובתבונה משנה עתים ומחליף את הזמנים ומסתיר את הכוכבים במשמרותיהם פרקיע כרצונו בורא יום ולילה גולה אור מפני חושך וחושך מפני אור ומעביר יום ומביא לילה ומעבדיר בין יום ובין לילה אדוני צבאות שמו אל חי וקיים תמיד ימלוך עלינו לעולם ועד ברוך אתה אדוני המעריב ערבים אמן מעריב ערבים אמן מעריב ערבים אמן מעריב ערבים אמן. You are praised, Yah. author of time and space, brings on evening with a word, opens heaven's gates with wisdom, adjusts the ages with sensitive judgment, varies the seasons, and orders the orbits of a sky full of stars in the emptiness according to its will. You create each day and each night afresh. Roll light in front of darkness and darkness in front of light, so gently that no moment is quite like the one before or after. You distinguish between day and night. Moment by moment you make day pass into night, and you alone know the boundary dividing one from the other. The unifier of all beings is your name, a timeless God rule forever. You who brings the evening in our praise. Mari Varvi Mamen, Mari Varvi Mamen, Mari Varvi Mamen.
We don't stay at radical smallness. We don't stay at that sense of awe looking up into the stars. We move instead to love. I know in some religious traditions there's an idea that God is love, which isn't really actually a Jewish idea. But what is a Jewish idea is that the purpose of life is love. Not love in a romantic sense, but love in the way that it's understood in Hebrew, ahava, which really means obligation. It really means the ways that we are obligated to each other, the ways that we are responsible to and responsible for each other, the ways we are obligated to the past and those who walked before us, and the ways that we are obligated to the future. I think how differently we might live in this world today if we remembered that future lives count too, and if they got a vote as well in how we treat our planet and how we treat each other and how we treat our resources. And so we open ourselves up to the possibility of being obligated, the possibility of love, the possibility of being connected. Page 14, we are loved.
You can sing along too.
We are loved, loved, loved by unending love and unending love. We are loved, loved, loved by unending love and unending love. We are embraced by arms that find us, even when we are hidden from ourselves. We are touched by fingers that soothe us, even when we are too proud for soothing. We are counseled by voices that guide us, even when we are too proud for soothing. We are loved, loved, loved by unending love and unending love. We are loved, loved, loved by unending love and unending love.
kissed, touched, soothed, and counseled. Ours are the arms, the fingers, the voices. Ours are the hands, the eyes, the smiles. We are loved by an unending love. We are loved, we are loved, we are loved by unending love, an unending love. We are loved, we are loved, we are loved, we are by unending love, an unending love. We are loved, we are loved, we are loved, we are loved by unending love, an unending love. Reb Zalman Schechter Shlomi of a blessed memory, one of Rabbi Randy's real Rebbes. He'd fly out to Boulder. If you ever heard Randy tell some of the stories about going to Boulder, well, I imagine that's some of what he was doing, was spending time with Reb Zalman. Reb Zalman compared God to to a field of grass. He said we get this whole concept of God wrong. In fact, he didn't like the word God at all. He felt like it didn't really speak to the Jewish meaning of what we mean. And he said when we look out at a field of grass, we can see individual blades, and we can look at those blades, and we can say it's that blade. It's that individual one. It is that piece of life. And in fact, the Zohar, the mystic text, says that every living thing, even every blade of grass, has an angel that whispers to it, grow, grow. And so just as we can look at that blade of grass, we can look out at that field of grass out there too. And we can say that field, and somehow it is made up of those individual blades, but it is different, that you go through and you pull out blades of grass, and that field is still that field. You mow it, and that field is still that field. Or like my yard, you don't mow it as much as you should, and that field is still that field. It's somehow different, not greater, not better, just different than the sum of its parts. This is the Jewish idea of Hashem, this word which is poorly translated into English as God. Not some divine other that is out there, but instead the totality of it all, of every rock and every blade of grass and every person and every piece of stardust that is floating out there, that somehow the totality of it all is what we mean and what we hold on to when we speak of oneness, when we speak of the divine. And so we close our eyes, we see ourselves as made of stardust. Page 15, Shema.
Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad.
Page 16. V'ahavta et Adonai Elohecha v'chol levacha v'chol nafshecha v'chol meodecha v'hayu hadvarim ha'ele asher anochi mitzavecha hayom al levavecha v'shinatam levanecha v'ribata bam v'shivtecha b'veitecha uvlechtecha v'aderech uv'shochbecha uv'kumecha ugsatam leot al yadecha v'hayu letotafo b'neinecha וכתבתם על מזוזות ביתך ובשעריך למען תזכרו ועשיתם את כל מצוותיי והייתם קדושים לאלוהיכם אני אדוני אלוהיכם אשר הוצאתי אתכם מארץ מצרים להיות לכם לאלוהים אני אדוני אלוהיכם אדוני אלוהיכם אמת. Okay, a little quiz for Greenville, right? I can never remember if it's Greenville or Greendale. Who here has seen Community amongst y'all? Some of you? Yeah, that's what I always am. Little quiz. Anyone know what commandment is most often repeated in what we would call the Torah, in the Bible? What commandment is the most often repeated commandment in the Bible? Who's got a guess? I love wrong answers, so let's hear your wrong answers. This is not rhetorical. Come on, Greenville's a Bible college, isn't it? Come on, let's see it, y'all. Say it. Love the Lord your God. Definitely a popular one, not the most common. Not the most common. Who's got another one? Come on, let's hear it. No guesses? This side of the room can take guesses too, unless you've heard me give this answer before. Honor your parents, yes. Yes, again, very popular. Some might even say part of the top 10. But not the most common. Yeah. Love thy neighbor. Another good one. Not quite there. Not quite there. What'd you say? Have no other gods before me, right? Like, so you're allowed to have other gods, just like they gotta not be your main god, I guess is that right? Another popular one, right? Some might even say the first commandment, but not the most commonly repeated commandment. The most common commandment. Anyone have another guess before I give it away? I should have offered like a Starbucks gift card, donuts. Yeah, Leslie knows. She's heard this too many times already, right? 36 times. More than any other commandment in the Torah, far and away more than any other commandment in the Torah, is some variation on you shall not oppress the immigrant, the orphan, or the widow. For you were immigrants in the land of Egypt. Except this word isn't really immigrant, it's ger. It's sometimes translated as stranger, foreigner with all of the nastiness that you sometimes hear that word said, right? Foreigner. That's what we're really talking about. 36 times, the Torah tells us, 36 times, you shall not oppress the foreigner, you shall not oppress the stranger, you shall not oppress the widow, the orphan, the most vulnerable amongst you. Why? Not because I am the Lord your God who took you out of Egypt to be your God. We get that one a lot, but that's not why here. Why shall you not oppress the stranger, the vulnerable? Because you have been the stranger. It's a moral logic that goes against how humans normally operate, right? Normally, when we are bullied, when we are victimized, when we are taken advantage of, we take it out on someone else. We pass along this trauma we know generationally. We pass it along in our societies. We pass it along in our politics. And so the Torah is calling us to act differently, to take those awfulnesses which happen to us, and to treat them not as something that gives us special obligations, but as something, not that gives us special privileges, but as something that gives us special obligations. The awfulness of our own lives and of our past is a vow, the Torah says. We make sure it doesn't happen to anyone today. So I'm thinking of those human beings who were packed under false pretenses onto planes and buses and sent across America where they didn't know anyone. Alone in a strange land. Strangers. The Torah tells us how we're supposed to act. For we were once those strangers. We know what it was like to be them. Yididum yidiyay-yo, yididididididididididididididididididididididididididididididididididididididididididididididididididididididididididididididididididididididididididididididididididididididididididididididididididididididididididididididididididididididididididididididididididididididididididididididididididididididididididididididididididididididididididididididididididididididididididididididididididididididididididididididididididididididididididididididididididididididididididididididididididididididididididididididididididididididididididididididididididididididididididididididididididididididididididididididididididididididididididididididididididididididididididididididididididididididididididididididididididididididididididididididididididididididididididididididid 18. Yiddy-dum, yiddy-yay-yay-yo. Yay-day-day-day-day-day-day. Dee-day-yay-yo. Yay-day-day-day-do. Mi chamocha ba'elim Adonai. Mi kamocha nera bakodesh. Nora tehilot osefele. Nora tehilot osefele. Yay-day-day-day. Yum diddy day 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 oh 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 oh. Yum diddy day day day. Yiddy dum yiddy ay ay oh. Yiddy day day do. Yiddy ay ay oh. Yiddy day day do. Malchutecha ra'uvanecha. Bokeh hayam lifnei Moshe u'Miriam. Zeli anu ve'amru Adonai imloch le'olam va'ed. Yadadadai. Yum diddy day 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 oh 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 oh. Yum diddy day day day. Yiddy dum yiddy ay ay yo. Yiddy day day do. Yiddy dum yiddy ay ay yo. Yiddy day do. V'ne'ema kifada Adonai et Yaakov. Ugo'elo meyad chazak mimenu. Baruch atah Adonai Gal Yisrael, Gal Yisrael.
Page 20.
Our building, the building we're in here at CRC, is named after a line from this prayer. A prayer we only say in the evening. I think it really doesn't matter how old we get. We never stop being totally afraid of the dark, right? There's something just different when the lights are out. something when the sun goes down, it just feels more vulnerable. I feel like we think differently, we feel differently. I certainly do. So we pray only in the evenings that we reside, that all of us, that the entire world reside under a Sukkot Shalom, a shelter of peace. Be spread over us, over our communities, over our city, over our state, over our nation, which God knows needs it, over our entire world. May everyone everywhere sleep tonight under a Sukkot Shalom. Askivenu Adonai, Eloheinu leShalom, Hamidenu Shomreinu leChaim. Askivenu Adonai, Eloheinu leShalom, Hamidenu Shomreinu leChaim. Allow us to lie and rise in peace. Shalom. Allow us to lie and rise in peace. Shalom. Ashkivenu Adonai, Eloheinu leShalom, Hamidenu Shomreinu leChaim. Ashkivenu Adonai, Eloheinu leShalom, Hamidenu Shomreinu leChaim. Ufros aleinu Sukkot, Sukkot Shlomecha, ufros aleinu Sukkot Shlomecha. Cover over us tonight with a Sukkot Shalom, a shelter of peace for you, for those you love. A Sukkot Shalom over all creation, over all creation. Ashkivenu Adonai, Eloheinu leShalom, Hamidenu Shomreinu leChaim. Ashkivenu Adonai, Eloheinu leShalom, Hamidenu Shomreinu leChaim. Things gonna be alright. Everything's gonna be alright. Everything's gonna be alright now. Everything's gonna be alright. We rise for the Amidah. We rise for that prayer which speaks not to the gap between us and the people we could become, but to the gap between the world as it is and the world as we are obliged to create it. And on Shabbos, it is a world with more rest. We know, in fact, I think it's so obvious sitting here on this side of this pandemic that rest itself is not equitably distributed in our world. That it's often the people who earn the least, who work the hardest, and have the least slack in this world. We know so often that rest needs a realignment with justice as well. And so we say the Amidah about the gap between the world as it is and the world as we can create it, and sometimes it starts by taking a nap. Page 23. Adonai Sifatai Tifta Ufi Yagi Tehilatecha Adonai Sifata tifta ufi agi Tehilatecha Adonai, prepare me to be a sanctuary, pure and holy, tried and true, with thanksgiving. I'll be a living sanctuary for you, Adonai. Sifata tifta ufi agi Tehilatecha Adonai. Sifata tifta ufi agi Tehilatecha. Take a moment for the prayers of our hearts. If you'd like to follow along to the words of the traditional prayer, they go through page 31, but don't let that get in the way of what's in your heart. And be seated whenever you are done. Page 30.
Shalom Rab Yisrael Amcha Tasim Leolam. 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 Ki Atahu Melech Adon Lecho HaShalom. Ki Atahu Melech Adon Lecho HaShalom. Shalom Rab Yisrael Amcha Tasim Leolam. Shalom Rab Yisrael Amcha Tasim Leolam. V'tov b'yinecha yivarech et Amcha Yisrael b'chol Yisrael Amcha Tasim Le'olam. Shalom Rava Yisrael Amcha Tasim Le'olam. Shalom Rava Yisrael Amcha Tasim Le'olam. Shalom Rava Yisrael Amcha Tasim Le'olam. Tasim Le'olam. Tasim
Rise on page 38 as we begin to conclude our services with words of Aleinu. Aleinu is this messianic vision of the world as it could be, as it should be, and it's telling this first word, the word that gives this prayer its name, is Al-Enu. It is upon us. We've got the High Holy Days, what we call the High Holy Days, Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur coming up, the Jewish New Year, the Jewish Day of Repentance. It's a time period where we really do this work of looking within ourselves and seeing who we have been and how that's different than who we should have been, who we could become. And I've been thinking, there's this line, it's like a cliched line, but it just keeps going through my head when I'm thinking about the High Holy Days this year. What if we are the people we have been waiting for? I think it's the idea of the holidays. It's that kind of radical responsibility that we are called to take for this world. Even if we're not, what if we act as if? What if we are the people we have been waiting for? Aleinu l'shabeach l'Adon hakol, la'tei gedula liotzer breshit, shelo asanu kigoyei haratzot, velo samanu k'mishpachot adama, shelo sam chelkenu kahem, וגורלנו כחומונם, ואנחנו קוראים ומשתחווים ומודים לפני מלך מלכי המלכים הקדוש ברוך הוא, שהוא נוטה שמיים ויוצר הארץ, ומושב יקרו בשמיים ממעל, ושכינתו זו בגובה מרומים, הוא אלוהינו אין עוד, אמת מלכנו אפס זולתו, ככתוב בתורתו, וידעת היום והשבות אל לבבך, כי אדוני הוא האלוהים בשמיים ממעל, ועל הארץ מתחת עינות. ונאמר, והיה אדוני למלך על כל הארץ, ביום ההוא יהיה אדוני אחד, ושמו אחד. You may be seated. I love these moments where you can tell, like, where someone went to summer camp based on the pieces they put into the Aleinu. It's the, yeah. We take a moment at the end of every service for what we call the Mourner's Kaddish. I always think it's worth paying attention to that name, Mourner's Kaddish. This is not the prayer for those who have gone. This is the prayer for the mourners. It's the moment when we stop and we acknowledge those in our community who have lost someone, who are in the midst of grief. Sometimes that's the immediacy of Shiva Shloshim, of the first weeks of loss. Sometimes it's the year of loss, and there's this tradition that you say this prayer for the first year. Some people every day for the first year, 3 times a day, after they've lost someone. And then there's the Artzeit, the yearly anniversary of when someone died, that we pause and we light a candle and we remember them. So if you're saying Kaddish right now, I just invite you to put up a hand or stand up or some other way that we can acknowledge those in our community who are in mourning.
Josh Porter, Sid Wolf, Owens, Lynette.
Thanks, Leslie. This is totally open to you all, too, if there's folks who are in mourning. Sarah, yeah. For Paul, for Sylvia, yeah, absolutely. Thank you. Thank you. Shirley Patisha. For Bear Robinson, of a blessed, blessed memory. There was such a moment last Shabbat morning when Bear wasn't over greeting kids as they walked in. It you could feel, right? So we remember those we've lost in years past. Sue Gallup and Wilma Riley. There's Natalie Schatzman, our president's grandma. Frances Rosen and Edward Sotsky. For Joanne Glazer Steinbaum and Rebecca Ferber. For Cecilia Graber and Barbanel Weekly. For Judy Hunter, Naomi Podolsky, for Gilbert Smith, Linda's dad, and for Jane Barker, for Sylvia Friedman, Eric's mom, and John Mann, of a blessed, blessed memory, Bonnie Mann's husband, and a place where a whole wing at Lift for Life Academy is in his honor. I taught in that wing. Molly Joyce de Placido, granddaughter of Michael. For Harold Guller, and Sylvia Margolis, Susan Buck's mom. For Dina Slavin, Ray's Slavin's mom. Harry Alpert and Rita Bach, who's Lindy Cantor's mom. For Dan Bogard, who was my grandpa that I'm named after. I live in his house. What'd you say? It's his yard site this week, Wednesday. For Carol Frumhoff and Wilbert Kerman, for Mitchell Morris, for Michael Smith and Philip Werschel, for Beatrice Daniel, for Peter Einstein and Sid Florman, Ford Miller Jr. and Ben Wishnoff, for Francis Rosen and Ezzy Kornblatt, for Samuel Nussbaum and Kyle Courier, for Pat Denlow and Susan Carlson, for Arthur Lash and Mimi Davidson, Karen's beloved, beloved grandma. For Faye Zimmerman. For Eva Poteat. For Martin and for Francis Ilovicki. And Robert Wofsy. For George Newman and Nina Balsam. Betty Marver. For David Kaskowitz and Larry Mange. For Daniel Williams, of a blessed memory. For Bruce Schneider. Autumn, do we have folks from the stream?
Yes, we have Rose and Wanda, and I am remembering Michael Pohl.
Thanks. Thanks, Autumn.
I mentioned Alice Handelman and Sue Faden, 2 wonderful women journalists.
Thanks, Leslie. And if there's anyone from Greenville, if you're all mourning anyone right now, and if there's any names you'd like to share, please feel comfortable to, not obligated at all. But your friend Dan, we're so sorry about your loss. May his memory be a blessing. So we invite everyone to stand as we fulfill the mitzvah, literally standing shoulder to shoulder with our mourners. As we say this ancient prayer that does not mention death, but affirms life. Page 41. V'kadal v'ytkada Shemei Rabbah, Be'alma divra chirute v'yamlich malchute, B'chayechon uv'yomechon, uv'chaye d'chol Beit Yisrael, B'agala uv'izman kariv v'imru, Amen. Yehei Shmei Rabbah Mevorach Le'olam Ulamei Almaya, Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh, v'yitadar v'yitaleh v'yitalal Shemei d'kudusha barichu, Le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata, tushbechata v'nechamata, damiran be'alma v'imru. Amen. Yehei Shlama Rabba min Shemaya, v'chaim aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'imru. Amen. Osei shalom b'mromav, u'ya'aseh shalom. Aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael, ve'al kol yoshvei tevel v'imru. Amen.
Oh, say shalom bimroma, huya say shalom, aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael, ve'imeru amen. Oh, say shalom bimromav, huya say shalom, aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael, ve'imeru amen. Ve'imeru amen. Ve'imeru amen.
Zichronam Livracha, may the memory of all of those that we have lost, all of those that we miss, be a blessing in our lives. And we say, Amen. You can be seated as we move from the holy to announcements. Tomorrow morning is the bat mitzvah of Daisy Lazaroff, so join us here. It will be a packed sanctuary, and the music is amazing. The brothers Lazaroff will be taking part. So that's at 10 a.m. Family services at 9:30. Would love to have anyone at family services. We invite immature adults to family services as well, not just kids. We won't judge you if you show up. Leslie comes all the time. Well, we judge Leslie, but that's a different. Tomorrow is Slichot. Tomorrow night, starting at 9, and Slichot is really the beginning of the High Holy Days. It's a moment in the evening, usually late. It's usually really late at night. We're doing it at 9 o'clock, which is not so late, but it feels late to me these days to 9 o'clock. And we have a taste of the music of the holidays, and we have a taste of the words and the sense and the smell and the feel of the holidays. And it's the time when we really begin to focus even more so on that work of looking inward, of doing that cheshbon hanefesh, of the accounting of who we have been and who we can become. So that is tomorrow night at 9 o'clock. But before that, at 8 o'clock, is a new member, I guess it's not a brunch, a new member reception. We don't call it brunch at 8 p.m. So everyone is welcome to it, but in particular, it's a time to welcome new members to the community. And for CRC regulars who don't know, we actually have a lot of new members. We have been growing through the pandemic and continue to be growing in really amazing ways. Remember to register for High Holy Day services online if you want to come in person. That's in all bolds and like 3 spots on my sheet. If you're going to come in person to the holidays, you need to register. No. There's a form to fill out if you're going to come in person. Sunday, CRC is going to have a booth at Sababa, which is this huge Jewish culture festival that's happening in St. Louis. I think on WashU's campus, yeah. And CRC will have a booth, but it's going to be incredible. They're predicting about 5,000 people will make their way through it. and really should be an amazing day. So check out all the information on sababastl.com. That's SABABASTL.com. Triple Chi this coming Sunday at 10:30. It's going to be on Zoom. I'm going to be talking about the work we've been doing down in Jeff City and sort of the experience of being in Jeff City, representing CRC's values in a state capital, which has been less than welcoming to our values pretty often. Speaking of values, really should be an amazing event. Also on Sunday, it's a packed weekend. 2 o'clock on Sunday at CRC, but it's a citywide event. J Street is hosting a conversation with, and her name is not written in Hebrew, so I'm going to butcher it, Ksenia Svetlova, I think, who's a former member of Knesset, member of the Israeli parliament, who is going to come and talk about threats to Israeli democracy and threats to American democracy and ways that we can sort of bring our shared values and our shared situations together as Jews across the world. All the details for everything are on the website, including all of the regular classes and all of these exciting things that are happening constantly at CRC throughout the week. Any other crowdsourced announcements? Great having Greenville here. Let's rise, let's put our arms around each other, let's give each other a blessing. Yivirechecha Adonai v'yishmerecha.
May God keep you and grant you peace.
Adonai panav elecha v'chuneka.
And all the nice, warm, cuddly feelings you have from this beautiful service, they sustain you through this coming week and give you peace.
Yis Adonai panav elecha v'yasem lecha shalom. Most importantly, wherever we go, may we take in the light that we need to sustain us, and may we refract it back into this world to make this world a better place because we have been in it. Shabbat shalom.
Shabbat shalom.
It was a beautiful service. Thank you, man.
Thank you. Yeah, I realized that about halfway through.